What does it mean to fight with integrity in a world that often rewards the opposite?
We're the voice of the voiceless. We're going to stand up for these people that don't have a voice. You have to be able to risk failure in order to succeed. My first case was a medical malpractice case. We won the case, and then he hugged me and said, you know, it's the first time in my life that someone's actually believed in me. And that's when I knew that what we do matters. I want to return the element of honor and dignity, civility to our practice for our members, because I think if the leader practices that way, everyone else will follow suit. The thing about this profession that we're in is, number one, you cannot be afraid to fail. It's okay to lose a case, and it's okay to fail. And that one of the things that I learned from baseball was, especially like a hitter, they fail 7 out of 10 times they're a 300 hitter, is that you got to get back up on the horse. This profession isn't for people that are afraid to lose. That's the thing that's important that I learned from baseball, and I continue every day as my practice as a leader.
What does it mean to fight with integrity in a world that often rewards the opposite? Today's guest has built his entire career around answering that question, not just with words, but with action. Geoff Wells is one of California's most respected plaintiff attorneys. He secured life-changing verdicts, taken on massive defendants, and mentored generations of young lawyers. For over 30 years, he's been a cornerstone at the legendary plaintiffs firm Green, Burlett & Wheeler. And today, as president of the Consumer Attorneys of California, he's leading the charge to bring honor, integrity, civility, decency, and courage back to the forefront of our profession. But Geoff's path to purpose didn't begin in the courtroom. It started on a small island in Washington, on the pitcher's mound, and with a fifth-year college course that unexpectedly changed everything. In this episode of Art of Purpose, we'll explore the moments, both personal and professional, as well as the ideals that shape the man behind the great reputation. Geoff, thank you so much for being with us here today, and welcome to Art of Purpose.
I'm happy to be here, Kenny.
Yeah, and thank you for taking the drive out. It's quite a drive for you, but you were telling me it's a very great drive because it's a memory of a great memory, rather, that you have out here in San Bernardino, right?
Yes, my best memory as a trial lawyer was from San Bernardino.
And we're going to talk about that in a bit, but we'll preface that by saying it was a $36 million verdict out here in San Bernardino.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. So before we get going, just want to remind everybody and thank everybody for listening, following along. Thank you for downloading, for sharing the YouTube podcast, Spotify, Apple podcasts. Thank you so much for going on this journey with us. We hope that this is a value add to your life. And if you hear this episode and think somebody would benefit so much from listening to it, forward it to them and encourage them to subscribe and continue on this journey with us. So with that, let's get going with Geoff. And what I want to start off with is geography, all right? Because you've been here in Southern California now for several decades, but that's not where you grew up, right? You grew up in Seattle, or near Seattle, Washington. Right. Can you talk to us a little bit about what life was like out in Bainbridge Island?
Sure.
Yeah.
So we moved to, we actually moved from Seattle to a place called Hood Canal. When I was in 9th grade, and my parents wanted to get out of the city. My oldest brother was just in the Vietnam War era, and so she wanted to go out and live in a different area away from the kind of the city life. Yeah. And so we had friends that had a vacation home out on Hood Canal in Washington, which is out in the Olympic National Forest side of the state. Yeah. And so we rented what was their summer home out on Hood Canal. And my mom had a great saying. She said, I don't mind the rain and I don't mind the fog, but I don't like the rain and the fog. And so that was what Hood Canal was. It had rain and fog all winter. And so we eventually moved from there to Bainbridge Island. So when I was in 10th grade, I went to Bainbridge Island High School. And really that year that I commuted from Hood Canal, which I had to take the Bremerton ferry, which was a 45-minute ferry to downtown Seattle and a 45-minute drive to Bremerton from Hood Canal to go to all-boys Catholic high school in the Capitol Hill section of Seattle called Seattle Prep, probably was a life-changing event for me as I look back now, where I had to have difficult academics, competition with other guys, And of course, you had the Jesuits that were awesome.
Sure, yeah.
And they really, I think I really matured as a person that year when I was 14 years old.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. What is it about that, that time period, that commute? I know the commute that I made but that was college already, not high school. In high school, it was a 10-minute commute to get to high school.
Yeah.
What did that period and going through that teach you, and that you feel that something that's continued throughout your life?
Yeah, I think it really taught me self-discipline. I had to get up at 5:30 in the morning every day, and then we would, get ready to go and have to drive to Bremerton and then take the ferry. I would do my homework sometimes on the ferry to finish that up, and then we had to drive up to Capitol Hill. My dad, we would leave a car on either side of the ferry because it was too expensive to commute with a car on the ferry. We didn't have that money, so we had a car that we had, kind of a beater car in downtown Seattle, that we had a little garage that we would rent for $25 a month. I still remember that. Awesome. And but I think it changed me. It taught me time management. I wanted to play sports. It was very tough to play sports because I had to catch the ferry back with my dad after work. So sometimes I would stay. I ended up actually running track that year. Was unable to stay for baseball because baseball practice goes so late. Yeah. So I did track that year. I did the triple jump. I ran the, I guess it was the 4x4 400 relay and something else. I don't remember, but it was an amazing year. But academically, it was really tough, and I ended up doing pretty well. And that's when I knew that. And my mom and dad were right. They saw something in me and said, "Hey." My two brothers, struggled academically. My sister did too, and they saw something in me and made me push to go for it.
Wow, that's so cool. Look, I already have the utmost respect for you, but now also learning about this athletic stuff going on in the background and everything that you went through high school. Wow, it's amazing. And you mentioned your parents. What did your parents do growing up? My understanding is that there was some printing business as well,
yes.
Right? Can you talk to us a little bit
about
that?
Sure. So my dad was a salesman in the printing business. And then as the year that we moved out to Hood Canal, he basically left his job. It was kind of a combination, laid off and left his job. And so he started to work for some other companies doing small printing jobs. And he was a salesman. My oldest brother ultimately became a salesman there. Then my middle brother was actually a printer that ran the Heidelberg 4-color press. That was an amazing feat until really the Kodak color printers kind of put him out of business, and so he now drives like a medical delivery truck.
Sure. All right, and so from a salesman perspective, it's funny. Maybe we don't think about it as we're living through life, right? But you look back on it, particularly what we do as plaintiffs' attorneys as well. There's persuasion involved in that as well, right? When you think back on that, can you go like, oh, I did take this from that experience from my dad, from my parents.
100%. I used to go in and I worked as a janitor for a while at my dad's place where he was a salesman, and I used to be able to watch him once in a while and see how he would make sales and how he would follow through. And he would make a list every morning of he goes, I'm going to make a list of the 4 or 5 things that I don't want to do, and I'm going to do them first. And I still do that to this day. Yeah. If I have to make a call on a tough case, or I have to tell a client we can't take the tough calls that we have to make frequently. I do those first thing in the morning now, and I got that from my dad actually.
Wow, and that's sort of like attacking the day, taking on responsibility immediately rather than sort of running away from it.
That's it.
Yeah.
Do not put off to tomorrow what you could need to do today.
That's awesome. So did you, growing up, I want to talk about baseball and how sort of that delved into college, but at any point during high school or growing up, had you even considered being an attorney?
No.
Yeah.
I did. We didn't know any attorneys. I had never met an attorney before. I didn't know anything about the practice of law at all. And really the little bit that I might have heard would be from family members saying that, attorneys are jerks.
Yeah.
Right? We've all heard the lawyer jokes and all that. So, I had no role model on that at all, actually.
And I think that's so important for people to hear as well, because I mean, part of what our podcast is about, big part is, how we arrived at our purpose, right? There is an art to it. There's sometimes it's not necessarily given to you, or we know it, as we're going through life, and then we hit this point of inflection, right? What did you want to be when you were growing up?
So I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player. I'll be honest. That's what I wanted to do.
I still want to be a Major League Baseball player.
Right. But I threw about 85, 86 in college, and as a right-hander, that's just not enough, you know. Yeah. And so I had to come to grips with growing up and beyond that.
Yeah. So, speaking of that, then maybe we transition into baseball. You said that you couldn't make practices, so because you had to go home, you had to catch the ferry.
Yep.
And I find the fact that you played college baseball in sort of the midst of all that so impressive, because you couldn't get all the practice time, or you couldn't get all that time. So there certainly was this great athletic talent that you had, but also dedication that you had to put toward it, aside from even spending time with the team or with the group. When did college become a possibility? How did that come about?
Okay, so when we moved to Bainbridge Island, I didn't have to commute on the ferry anymore to school, so I was able to start playing baseball there.
Okay.
So I made the varsity as you're a new kid on the block, and I made the varsity as a sophomore, which was sort of a big deal at the time because we had a pretty good senior class at Bainbridge Island at that time. One of the players was drafted, I remember. And and then I, continued to pitch and whatnot. And the interesting thing was, my dad was a professional baseball pitcher in the Cincinnati Reds organization and was a good basketball player.
Oh, wow.
So he actually played freshman basketball at the University of Washington. In those days, they had a freshman team.
Yeah.
And then they don't have that anymore. But those days,
Kareem wasn't allowed to play with
that's
the
right.
varsity, right?
Yeah, that's right. Actually, a lot of people don't know that story. UCLA, the freshman team at UCLA beat the varsity. when
undefeated varsity
when then
team.
Lou Alcindor was a freshman in college.
Yeah.
But so by the time, and so my dad didn't coach me that much in baseball, and he did coach me some in basketball. And then as time went by, and then finally I guess it was my summer after my junior year, I played in some tournaments and had some scouts there. Including a Los Angeles Dodgers scout, believe it or not. And so I signed some scouting cards, and that's when I knew, okay, maybe I do have a chance, because a lot of the colleges have friends that are scouts, and they will talk. And so then I started to get college letters that summer for the next year from Washington State and University of Washington and Central Washington and Gonzaga and these different schools. And so then I kind of knew that maybe it was going to work.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in today. I want to share with you that this episode is brought to you by the law office of Kenny S. Ramirez. Now, life can change in an instant. Whether it's a car accident that wasn't your fault, a slip and fall in a grocery store, or even the tragic loss of a loved one. And the aftermath can feel overwhelming. You might be dealing with trying to get medical treatment, medical bills, missing work, calls from the insurance company, or just the stress of not knowing what to do next. That's where we come in. At the Law Office of Kenny S. Ramirez, you have a team, a family of accident attorneys who are here to give you back your time and peace of mind. We're here to help you get the maximum compensation you deserve so you can focus on healing and getting back to what matters most to you: your life, your family, your future. If you or someone you know needs some guidance and support after an accident, click the link in the description below for a free case evaluation. You'll speak with our team and we'll help you get your life back on track. And we're committed to being by your side every single step of the way. No matter life's challenges, you don't have to face it alone. We're here for you. Now let's get back into the episode.
Yeah, that's so fun. I've heard you say in the past, in fact, you and I spoke in Hawaii at a conference last year, and you mentioned this then, so I want to bring it up now and sort of ask you to talk a little bit more about that. You said that baseball is a game of failure, and that it taught you so much then and prepared you for the legal career as well. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that's a really good point. And so the thing about this profession that we're in is, number one, you cannot be afraid to fail. And in fact, the lawyers that say, "Oh, I've never lost a case," or blah blah blah, and that's true. There are lawyers that have never lost a case, but it's okay to lose a case, and it's okay to fail. And that one of the things that I learned from baseball was, especially like a hitter, they fail 7 out of 10 times. They're a 300 hitter, is that you got to get back up on the horse when you fail. You can't. You can have a moan and groan for. I give myself 2 days if I lose a case, 2 days, and then move on, and then you have to be able to get back up and get back in the fight. And this profession isn't for people that are afraid to lose. That's the thing that's important that I learned from baseball, and I continue every day as my practice as a lawyer.
Yeah, that part about not being afraid to lose, right? Because also then that drives you to try those tough cases, right?
Yeah.
To represent people the best way possible. I heard something yesterday where, they said, it's better to set a high goal and to fall short of that than to lower your standards to something that you think is safe and you can achieve.
That's right.
And I think that's part of what you're talking about here, right?
Yep. You have to be able to risk failure in order to succeed in this business, in my opinion.
Yeah. I also remember you mentioning how baseball taught you how to be a good teammate.
Yeah.
And to play within a team. How has that carried into your legal career?
Okay, so that's sort of the basis for my philosophy as a lawyer about practicing with honor, decency, integrity, civility, and courage. I had 1 year where I had a bad elbow for about 2 months. I had to go to rehab and whatnot. I could sit around and moan and groan, or I could sit in the dugout and be happy for the success of the other guys on my team. I decided to take that route. That's the same route as I've taken as a lawyer. I'm happy for the success of other lawyers. We are all in the plaintiff side. Maybe we're sort of in competition with each other, but really I feel like we all believe in each other and help pick each other up too. Yeah. And I think that's unique to our profession, our side of the law. The defense side doesn't have that so much, but I'm genuinely happy when I see Kenny Ramirez got a big verdict or got a good settlement. I'm happy for you and your firm and your sister. And I feel like when you succeed, it raises all of the boats for all of us. And so that's how I see the world, and that's how I practice too.
And so I love that, and I subscribe to that 100%. Sign me up for the mailing list and a seminar, all of that, and that's just how I live my life as well. I think that there's enough success to go around for everybody, and your success, somebody else's success, doesn't take opportunities away from me. So let's celebrate that. Not everybody, like you said, believes that. What would you say to somebody who is going like, well, I'd like to view the world the way that Geoff views it, but I don't necessarily feel like that. But I see that ideal and I like to pursue that. Like, how do we get around those sort of emotions to being able to go that route?
Yeah, I think it's pretty simple. In our profession, we share information, we share expert witnesses, we share ideas, and when we meet in conferences, we exchange those ideas freely. And we want to have other people do well. If you give, you're going to get back tenfold. I just believe that. And I'm a Catholic person, so maybe it's part of it. It's a religious thing about caring for others and giving back to the community where you are. But I really believe in our profession that when you give to others and help others, you're going to get a huge reward for that somehow. I don't know exactly how, but I believe you will.
I love that, Geoff, because it's also my question was, and I love the way you answered it, and a little roundabout way of getting there for me is that, I asked, how do you shift your mentality? And your response was about taking action. And I think that's so important because sometimes we don't feel the way, or, maybe there's something that we want to do or someone that we want to be or change, but we may not feel that way. But if we can start taking the actions, like sharing information, like doing that, eventually that becomes our heart and our mentality as well.
I think so. And, the various listservs have really enhanced the ability to do that at different levels now and at a rate that maybe is a different rate for everybody.
Yeah.
But there's always something you can do to give back.
Absolutely. So you have a grind of a schedule with baseball, right? It's like 60-game schedule. a year, and my understanding is, because of that schedule, you took a 5th year, and in that 5th year, kind of things changed. You took a First Amendment class with I have Professor Gerald Baldasti.
Yeah,
right?
Baldasti.
Baldasti.
Yeah.
And can you talk to us a little bit about that and how that had an impact on your life?
So, when you're playing a 60-game schedule and you're doing practices and you have weight training in the morning and you got practice in the afternoon, pretty hard to keep your grades up. I did have like a 3.2 or a 3.4 or something like that. But my last year in college, you would always lighten your load. So at Washington, we're on a trimester system, 3 trimesters. So you lighten your load in the spring. And if you do that over the course of 4 years, eventually you need another year. Yeah. And so that year I coached a little bit as a graduate assistant, but I also had a lot of time to study because I didn't have to lift in the morning and have a 3 or 4 hour practice in the afternoon. I had this time to study, so I got 4.0 that year. But I took this class, First Amendment class. It was sort of we had grad students in there and regular undergrads in there, and he did the Socratic method. So he called on you, and you had to stand up and talk. And I loved that. I was like, wow, this is what I want to do. Yeah. I like to argue. I like to make my point. And that's when I still feel it right now in my stomach. I feel like I want to be able to make an argument and talk about things in life, in politics or whatever it is. So that's what inspired me. And then my girlfriend at that time, her older sister, who's, by the way, is now was a judge in Seattle, appellate justice, and now a retired judge. But she's the one she was in law school. And she said, you should think about taking the LSAT. You like this stuff. She said, I don't so much. It's really, really hard. But I said, so that's what inspired me. It was actually my college girlfriend's sister, Linda Lau. That was her name.
Yeah. And in thinking back during that time, I think that there are many students, young people that are, in college and might not know what they want to do, right? Yep. They're going because it's important to go to college. They're getting an education, but they don't quite yet know what is the next step. Or they have plans or ideas for what they want to do, like, us who still want to be Major League Baseball players. But then they go, well, maybe plans change. How do you remain open to that? And then how do you, because at some point you went all in, right? You said, hey, I'm going to do this. How do you remain open to it? And then when do you know to go all in on something?
That's such a great question, Kenny. So I'm just going to repeat. I had no idea that I was going to ever be a lawyer. I didn't know any lawyers. I'd never met any lawyers. I had my girlfriend's older sister was in law school. That was about it. That's all I knew. And then I decided that I talked to my parents, said, well, my major was advertising. Maybe I'm going to change to PE and be like a high school teacher and a baseball coach. My dad said, okay. He listened to me. He said, okay, well, you're a high school coach. He's a good guy. He's athletic director of the high school. He's a football coach, and he's a baseball coach. And he maybe makes $35,000 or $40,000 a year. And if you're okay with that for the rest of your life, then go for it. And I was like, I don't think I'm okay with that.
When you put it that
I had
way.
some student loans starting to accumulate, sure. I had no money, I had no car, and I go, oh, maybe I'm not okay with that. Yeah. And so maybe I do. And so that's when I went in and I took a class for the LSAT and did pretty good on it. And then I was all in. Yeah. That's the one thing I would tell people, young people, is once you make a decision to do something, don't let anyone else deter you from that goal. So I was the only one of my family that graduated college. I had my oldest brother went a couple years and dropped out. So I knew I needed to graduate college. And then once I took the LSAT and said I can get into some law schools, don't let anyone deter you from finishing law school. Yeah, I had student loans. I had no money. And guys that I graduated college from started to make money. They started to have a car, and and they're looking at me. And I remember I had this Volvo wagon had 275,000 miles. Man, that thing chug. And but I knew at the end I wanted to invest in myself. That's the point I want to make to you, is that, and to your viewers, is you're investing in yourself. And I believed in myself.
Yeah. No, I love that. Thank you, Geoff. I think that's such valuable advice on wise counsel, really. And, I love the part of you speaking with your parents as well, because I think sometimes we can feel alone, right? And as if we're making decisions alone and in a vacuum. But it's good to speak, in this case, with parents, with people that are close to us, our loved ones, people that care about us. Because I love the question that he posed here, because you might not have been thinking that, right?
I
You're
was
like,
not.
hey, this profession makes X amount. If you're okay with that, then go for it, and I'll support you, right? But that put a question to you that you weren't thinking about, right? And it's about asking and bringing in all these people. And then once you make a decision, go all in.
Go all in, and don't let anything deter you. Don't let money, other people's success or people telling you lawyers can't do this and can't do that. Don't let anything deter you from that goal. That's the one thing that you can control.
Yeah. You went to Pepperdine Law School. That's in Malibu, California.
Right.
You were not in Malibu, California.
Right.
How did you choose Pepperdine? How did you make your way down south to California?
Okay, so that's a great story.
Yeah.
Okay, so I applied to Hastings College. I applied to the UW where I went to college. I applied to University of Puget Sound, which is in Tacoma. Okay. Then I applied to, at that time, Gonzaga. Those were the only law schools in Washington, by the way. Then I applied to Hastings, applied to Pepperdine, USC, and then one school in the East Coast, Catholic University in Washington, D.C., thinking that you could probably get a job there. That's kind of why I looked at it. So I got into Pepperdine. I got into Hastings. I did not get into the UW. I got into UPS. I was waitlisted at Gonzaga. I go, you know what? I looked at that brochure. At Pepperdine. I go, man, that looks pretty nice. I've been living in the rain my whole life.
Yeah.
That looks pretty nice down there in Malibu. And I was shocked. Of course, the cost of living was a shock.
Yeah.
And so that was a tough part for me. I had to go to like an aunt, and I had to borrow money, and I had student loans, and I had, my car barely made it, but I did make it, and the people at Pepperdine could not have been nicer. They were there to help you succeed.
Yeah.
And so I felt like I made the right choice.
Yeah. No, absolutely. All right. Did you have any? You may not have, but I'm going to ask the question anyways. Did you have any idea of what kind of law you would practice?
Zero.
Okay.
I had no idea. This is a funny story too. My parents said, and I didn't know one person in Los Angeles or Southern California, not one person when I came here.
Awesome.
My parents had a friend that lived in Oxnard. And they said, that looks pretty close to LA, and maybe you could, see if you can live there, or if they would know. And I actually I had like a little bank account in Seattle, and it looked like that was the closest town to like Pepperdine, Malibu, and LA. And I actually did the bank in Oxnard, which was stupid because I had no idea geography really at the time. And
for our listeners,
and I never went and saw that person in Oxnard once.
Yeah, for listeners who may not be aware, it might look geographically close.
It's not.
But it's not.
Right.
Especially with this traffic.
Right.
Okay, so you didn't have any idea what type of law you'd practice.
Right.
You sort of came in, you said, I'm going to go to law school and be an attorney, and we'll figure it out as we go. Right?
That's right. And I just thought I had a business sense. I'd worked some jobs. I'd worked as a janitor in the printing business. I worked at different places, odd jobs, landscaping. I had a window washing business that I did. Funny thing, 10 years after I was a lawyer, I still had these women calling me, Geoff, could you come and do our windows? I'm like, I live in Los Angeles now, and this is on Bainbridge Island. Yeah. I can't, if you come home for Christmas, can you come and do the windows? And I go, I gave all my window stuff away.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was, and you just learn about life by doing things in the community where you live. And I think that's a big part of the common sense part that we've learned as lawyers, right? Is you get to use that in your everyday, I think, conversation and communicating with juries too.
You mentioned this window washing business.
Yeah.
I just wanted to follow up on that because I think that's awesome. It says a lot about you as well growing up, right? Because it wasn't also like I'm just going to sit around and do nothing.
Right.
Hey, like I'm going to do something, make some money, help some people out, but like staying active the entire time. And also this component of I feel like you can go anywhere and be friends and make friends with anyone.
Yeah.
Right. And I think whether it's from your parents, that salesman way of being able to connect with people, business, the way that you are naturally. Why, when you look back and think on your life and growing up, how important has it been to connect with people through these different methods?
It's a really good question. I mean, I guess because I was the third boy of four kids, sort of on my own a lot. And as a result, I had to figure things out, but I also watched, right? I could watch. I had two older brothers. I'd watch them usually screw up and go, okay, I'm not going to do that. Yeah. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to figure it out for myself. And then also learn to depend on myself, that I'm responsible for my own happiness in my life. And I realized at a young age, too, that happiness comes from helping people. The other side of that I learned from my mom was in the 1970s, we didn't have a term called homeless people. They were called hobos in Seattle. And there was a growing hobo population in downtown Seattle. And my mom, through her church, started a food bank for the people that were homeless. And I would go down and work on that on Sundays. And I would see firsthand, how tough life could be. And I learned that when I was 10, 11, 12 years old. So that has stuck with me too, to have compassion and empathy for people. I drove in here today. I saw some people in tents underneath the trees. And I go, hey, man, can you imagine living in the IE in the summer in a tent and it's 110 degrees out? And as a lawyer, I think you have to have empathy for people. You have to learn to hear people's stories. And everybody has a story, usually. And so that's a thing I learned at a young age, too, that element of empathy for people that maybe don't have it as good as you do.
Yeah, no, I think that's so critical. And, I don't have any children, but I think about sort of in the future how you teach children that stuff as well. And because it's different, the life that they will experience is different from the life that I experienced, right? And maybe I learned stuff because of firsthand experience and knowledge from that stuff, right? But then how do you still teach those things, right? And for example, with your mother having that, being involved in that charity, I think that's something that's loving and so helpful, and it shows and helps children see that as well.
I think kids are very visual and they're very smart, and they see things and pick it up right away. And you have someone comes into a food bank and they've got two kids that don't have enough to eat. Like when you're a 10, 11, and 12-year-old kid, that puts a huge impression on you. Yeah.
Certainly. You go through Pepperdine Law, you graduate, and we know you as Geoff Wells, a big plaintiff's attorney, and big verdicts, big settlements, amazing career. But you started off on the other side of the V, right?
That's right.
Doing defense work. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and how that experience, even provided a foundation and helped your, career as a plaintiff's attorney?
Sure. So I started out, my first clerking job was doing medical malpractice defense. And I learned how to summarize records. I learned how the nurse's notes interdict with the doctor's notes, that interdict with the lab reports, that might interdict with radiology reports. And I learned how all of those things worked beginning. So I had no idea how valuable that tool was going to be later on, but it was. So then my first job was, as a lawyer, was, to get a job. My student loans were starting, and I got a job, and I worked for a firm that was called Dummett and Agajanian, and then it became Dummett, Faber, and Brown. But they did a very unique practice where they did medical malpractice on one side, and then they also did racetrack liability on the other side, because Kerry Agajanian's family was in the race car business. Wow. And so I would be working on complex emergency room, standard of care, and then bar fights in the bathroom at Ascot Raceway, and a tire coming over the fence and hitting people. So I got to learn
those
about.
Scene inspections were much better than that.
That's right. The scene expected at Ascot much better. And but I gave me a kind of a wide variety of things to learn about. I learned about reserves. I learned about how the claims adjuster sets reserves on a case, and how important it is to be able to get the information that they need now as a plaintiff lawyer, to get the information the defense needs to be able to properly evaluate the case. Because if they don't properly evaluate the case early on, that can really haunt you later on. And so I learned about the importance of that, and that most defense lawyers want to settle the cases. They don't sit there and go, oh, I want to go have 20 trials this year.
Right. It's not
They
what
don't.
wanna
Yeah,
do.
that is not what they want to do. They want to be able to resolve. If it's a liability case, they want to be able to resolve it for a fair amount. And if it's not a liability case, then they'll try the case if they think that there's no liability. But other than that, most cases do get resolved. And how is it that it does? You have to understand, what do they need to be able to evaluate, and the importance of who your client is also a thing that I learned. I mean, is the plaintiff, the first paragraph in every defense lawyer's deposition summary is what? Impression of the witness. Paragraph. It's a good witness, it's a bad witness, and that's an important thing too. Yeah, to know that, and then be able to, you help your client become the best witness that they can become. Some you can't do much with them. And then if that's true and you have to go to trial on that case, you just say, hey, my client isn't a very happy person. They're not very likable. They don't want to be here. And so are you going to, do you understand that? And is that something you're going to take out on them? And so there's ways to handle that type of client. But if you can make your client into a person that does well and tells the truth and is forthright, gosh, it really helps your case. So those are all things I learned starting out in the defense.
That's so valuable because, I started off on the plaintiff side of it. I've only ever done that. But as my career has gone on, I love speaking with people who have that defense background because all my questions are that, right? Like, how do they do that? Like, what are they thinking about? Because just it's information that I wasn't exposed to, but I could see, wow, it's so valuable to know that.
Right.
Very much so. All right. After that, you did about like 20 cases with a solo practitioner.
Yes.
And at that stage, once before even starting there, had you thought about being a trial attorney? Is that something you wanted to do?
So I did want to do it. Yeah, and when you're on the defense firm, it's really hard to get to be a first chair in a trial because if you're representing a doctor or a hospital, they want the person whose name's on the door. So I did get to do a couple of arbitrations by myself, and I knew that I liked it, and I knew the cross-examination. I knew what I wanted to do. And then I went, sole practitioner was Michael Hughes. He's now passed away, rest in peace, but he was an amazing lawyer. And I remember when I left the defense firm, he goes, wow, we really like you to stay. They're probably going to, and I said, I really want to try cases. And they go, wow, they're probably going to want Mike Hughes to try the case too. And I said, that's probably true, but I'm willing to take that chance. Within a week of that conversation, in trial, picking my first jury.
Wow.
That's a true story.
That's cool.
On a med mal case.
Wow.
Against two older, experienced lawyers, and I won the case.
Yes, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, advice for young attorneys who could be facing something similar, right? They're going up against seasoned attorneys, and there's that fear factor. There's all of that. What's advice for those young attorneys?
Their advice, my advice is, number one, I told the jury this is my first case as a lead lawyer for the plaintiff. I told them that. I told the judge that. I told the clerk that. I told the jurors that. And as a result of that, I think they were willing to kind of help me a little bit, right? So that's one.
Brilliant.
Don't be afraid to say who you are. I see sometimes younger lawyers want to come in, they want to be cool. They want to be tough guys or gals. They want to act like nothing bothers them. I don't think that's the way to go. I think you go in there and be yourself, be vulnerable, be human, make mistakes. But the main thing you got to do in this business is you have to go to trial and prove to the defense that you can do it. And so what's the first thing the defense does when they get a new case and the lawyer's on the case? They look them up in the sheets. Are they a trial lawyer? Or are they not a trial lawyer? Are they going to work the case? Or are they not going to work the case? Is this a person that is going to fight me to the end? Or is this a person that's going to cave early on? And so that is an important element. So number one, impression of the witness, the plaintiff. Number two, who the plaintiff lawyer is. And so your advantage when you're a young lawyer is they don't know who you are. And if you're
Great way
good,
of looking at it.
yeah, it's true. And I had that advantage for probably those first 20 trials. They knew Mike Pugh's name, but Geoff Wells, who the heck is this guy, right? So I go in there, and then afterwards they shake my hand. They go, "Wow, you did a really good job on that case."
Yeah.
And those older lawyers said that to me, and I said, "Well, I did know the med mal stuff because I had been a med mal defense guy, so I did know that. But then even when I got into the personal injury cases, I understood the medical records.
That's so important.
And so you can see how important that is, because they'll say, well, your client, there's a pre-existing that and a pre-existing this, or they didn't really have that. And I said, had you seen the nurse's notes? Yeah, I looked at them. Do you remember what the nurses said? No. Bam. You might have a thing in there. 'Cause I'm telling you, those nurses' progress notes are loaded with gold and diamonds for the plaintiff lawyer. But you have to read them, and you have to, if the abbreviations, you got to look up what the abbreviations mean, and you have to understand that, because those notes can be very helpful when you review the records, and most of the defense lawyers are not going to look at them.
Yeah.
And so that's a thing that I carried through. And that also the younger lawyers, that's something that you can do as part of your hard work to prepare. Read the medical records.
Yeah. I think that's so key, and it's great advice, Geoff, because most of the time plaintiff attorneys, and especially young plaintiff attorneys, are just waiting for like the expert's report, their expert's report, or like a nurse's summary of the records, or, and they'll look through that and see what they identify. I think it's very different when you're the one that's reading it. And I fully admit, especially early on, it was like having Google open and the records, because every other word, every 5 words, it's an acronym or something that I don't know what that means. So you're like just typing it in and like, what does this mean? But that exercise is so helpful, because it's different when you, as the attorney who know what can help your case or hurt your case, and reading through those records is entirely different from having somebody else summarize the records.
I mean, that is. And I know now with the advent of AI, people are going to more and more often rely on AI on the records. And I'm sure that's probably good. They do a good job, but you got to read them yourself too. I wouldn't depend on anyone else to, especially the important records, to do the work. And of course, when you're a young lawyer, you have no one else to do the work for you, right? So
you are the someone else.
You are the someone else. So when you're doing your first trial, or first couple of trials, you're going to be the one doing those records, looking at those records, and that's going to help build your foundation. And those acronyms tend to repeat over time. Yeah, so you will learn them. And there's a book that you can get for just acronyms. And I had a great aunt that was a nurse that gave me this book, like, I don't know, 40 years ago. I still have it, and I still look it up. That's awesome. Little, ETOH and PT, all these different acronyms. Yeah. And it's interesting. So
that's so cool. That you joined Green, Burlett and Wheeler. We all know that firm,
right?
And made the best of attorneys there. And what was that process? Is that something that was on your mind? And how's that been for these 3 decades?
Right. Okay, so it's been unbelievable. Yeah. It was not on my mind at the time. I had been roommates with Brian Panish. Brian and I were roommates for about a year.
Oh, okay.
When he was interviewing with Brown Green to go to that firm, he was working at a defense firm called Engstrom, Lipscomb, and Lack. And then he went from Engstrom, Lipscomb, and Lack to the Green O'Reilly firm at that time. And so I kind of knew about the firm, and I had played on their football team, flag football team. I knew some of the guys, but I wasn't really planning to leave Michael Pugh's. And an opportunity opened up for me there. They had an opening, and Tim Wheeler called me and said, "Hey, would you be interested?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, I think my wife's going, are you kidding me? Of course you're interested."
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
well, there's our loved ones chiming in,
that's
right?
it. They help us, save us from ourselves sometimes. I had that opportunity. It came up. I met with Brown Green, Bruce Braylett, Tim Wheeler, John Taylor, and Brian Panish. We had lunch, and we talked, and I knew that right then that it was the place. And it's like a family, and they put the clients and your personal families first. A lot of people don't do that. They'll say, you're married to the law, forget about your family. my other suggestion to the young lawyers is if somebody tells you that, that's not the right place to be.
Yeah.
Your family is first. If your wife and your kids are not taken care of and happy and healthy, nothing else matters.
Yeah.
That's what I tell
100%.
people. Nothing else matters. And you don't have kids yet, but you'll see that that's a true statement later on.
No, absolutely. What case, this is alluding a little earlier when we were discussing, but what case in your career has, made you say, this is exactly what I was meant to do?
Yeah, that's a great question. Probably my first case, honestly. My first case was a medical malpractice case. It was a person was getting a myelogram, and there's two types of myelograms. There is a oil-based myelogram and a water-based myelogram. And they had a neck, some kind of a vertebral fracture. And so it's a test. And I can't remember which one was which, but if you have one of those, you're not supposed to lay down. Okay. You're supposed to stay up. It probably was the water-based myelogram. You're supposed to lay down, but I don't remember. And the nurse had laid him down, and he had a convulsion, seizure, and 3 avulsion fractures in his cervical spine as a result of that. And so I was a nursing care case, and of course the doctors are blaming the nurses are blaming the doctors. They didn't tell them. The nurses said, you didn't tell us it was a water-based myelogram, and the doctor said I did. And so I kind of had them pointing the fingers at each other. But I came out from that case, and I won the case 12-0 on negligence and causation. I maybe won $200,000. I don't remember what was at that time. It was a cap at $250, by the way. Maybe won $2,000, but I came in, and they argued for a defense verdict, and this was like 1988. Okay, so my client had AIDS-related syndrome, and I didn't really know what that was, and I wasn't sure if it was like contagious. This is the beginning of the whole AIDS thing, right? Yeah. So I was really nervous, and I remember, and I made the mistake. I don't know if it's a mistake, but I didn't know. No one had told me, don't have your client sit at counsel table. And I was by myself, and I had like 3 lawyers against me. So I kind of wanted somebody at the counsel table with me. So I had him sit with me at the counsel table. But then this was like the early beginning of like AIDS and everything. We didn't know if you could get it from like drinking their water, right? So we had a water glass on there, and I didn't know if he had drank out of it or not. So I was afraid to drink out of the water, and I was in Pomona, and it was like 100. It was sweltering heat, and it was hot, and you're sweating, and I was afraid to drink the water like the whole time. I'll never forget that. But he went on. We won the case, and then he hugged me and said, it's the first time in my life that someone's actually believed in me. And that's when I knew that what we do matters.
So much.
Yeah.
Wow. I want to give space, if you could, just tell us a little bit about that case.
Yeah, the big case.
The big one, right?
So,
San Bernardino one.
So the case that I'll carry with me for really my career case was a gal named Isabel Escamilla Sanchez. And Isabel was 5 years old, and her mother worked. She was a manager at a Subway, and she had to open some days of the week. And so she would have to go to work early in order to open. And the days that she would have to open, she would drop Isabella off at her mom's house. And then Isabella would take the bus to the school for kindergarten from her grandma's house. Okay. And that particular day, grandma also had to go somewhere early. And so she took Isabella to the neighbor's house, who had two girls, and they were all going to cross the street together. Okay. And so there's a traffic light, a crosswalk and everything down the block. No one used it. The bus would come around the corner. They would jaywalk across the street to the bus stop, and then they would go to the bus. Okay. And so that morning, Isabella sees the bus. The woman has her hand, and she breaks free and darts out, and a car's coming to her from her left and hits her at about 38 miles an hour. And so she's thrown over 70 feet. She has a skull fracture. She's a Glasgow coma scale at the scene, if you know what that is now. I think it was a 2.
Goodness.
Okay, so she's basically almost dead at the scene. So they get her, the paramedics come and they get her to the hospital, and she has over 200 seizures within about 3 or 4 days. So terribly brain damaged. She has a cranial swelling, so they got to take the bone flap out of her head to save her life, basically. And they do save her life. They tried to put that bone flap back in. She got infection and almost died. So she had that bone flap out for many years. So she looked pretty bad. I mean, and so she had a trach. She had the use of her right hand. I think it was her right hand. Unable to use her left hand. Unable to speak. Unable to ever take care of herself the rest of her life. Okay, so that's her, and then her dad was undocumented and had a gardening business, and he had gotten picked up and deported one time. This is a few years ago, before all the craziness going on now. That happened to him then, and so he came back, and he was this unbelievably committed guy to this girl, and so she's 5 or 6 when this starts, and she's in a wheelchair for the rest of her life. She's getting bigger and she's getting bigger and she's bigger, 100 pounds, 110 pounds. He's still lifting her in her truck. And so we brought the case against the school bus company. It was a private school bus company. And then also initially the school district for having the bus stop on the other side of the street when they could have had it on the same side of the street because all the kids were on that same side and they knew that they were all on that same side. So Judge Pacheco granted a summary judgment for the school district.
Who's been on this podcast,
Who's been on this podcast. Judge Pacheco was the trial judge. Fantastic trial judge, by the way. But we did disagree on this, but he granted a summary judgment to the school district, but kept the bus company in and the driver in. And we named the driver individually and the bus company. And what we found out during discovery was that they had a rule that if the bus driver were to see anything, unsafe going on at the bus stops, that they were to report that right away. And that the school district would then go to the parents and say, look, you're jaywalking across the street, that's unsafe, and if you do it again, we're going to pull your bus privileges. That was their rule. And the bus driver says she never saw him cross the street to the bus. So that was her defense, how to get out of it. Sure. And she was a younger African-American woman. She's a pretty nice gal. So I never saw that, and if I'd seen it, I would have reported it. But she was lying on that. And so the women that crossed the street with our little girl, they were, at least 2 of them are undocumented women too, by the way. They were very afraid of the whole process, didn't want to get involved, and basically wanted to blame mom for dropping daughter off at grandma's house when she should have been taking her to school herself. So they were not helpful at all to us in the case, and actually wanted to testify against us in the case, saying the mom knew that she jaywalked before, and she had jaywalked with grandma and blah, blah, blah. So it was dicey. Yeah. And then during the course of the depositions, I said to one of the moms that crossed there, I said, well, where did you cross the street? She goes, well, I crossed it the same place that Isabella did. I said, well, why didn't you go down to the crosswalk and use the crosswalk and the light? And she goes, I guess we're lazy, I guess. That was the answer. So that's kind of a bad answer for us, right? It looks bad. And then I said, well, where was the bus when you crossed the street? This was the key question in the case. She goes, what do you mean? I go, well, did you wait on your side of the street until the bus turned the corner and got to the bus stop across from you? Yes. How often did you do that? What do you mean? Well, did you do that every day? Yeah, every day. I said, how about when your daughter was dropped off? Would you jaywalk back across the street when she was dropped off from the bus on the way back? Yes. Where was the bus when you did that? What do you mean? I said, well, was the bus still at the bus stop when you jaywalked right in front of the bus back to your house? Yes. That was the key testimony in the case. So the whole case turned as a result of that testimony. We had been to mediation. There was a mediator's proposal and all this. I pulled our demand. What was our demand? I remember what it was. So whatever it is, it's withdrawn. We're going to try the case. And so that case, we went to trial. And interestingly enough, we had a separate line for the bus driver, the bus company, couldn't have the school district summary judgment, and then mom. And I said, mom had jaywalked in the past and grandma had. I'm going to accept some responsibility for that. But I mean, the school bus, they have professional drivers that are trained. Do you think these women appreciated how dangerous it was to cross that street? 35 miles an hour speed limit there in this area out, kind of an unincorporated area of Highland. And the experts said, no, there's no way the moms really appreciated that. And the bus drivers are trained on it, and the school safety officers are trained on it, and they have videos that they train them on. And so we got the videos. We played the videos during the trial. What's the most dangerous part of a child getting in and out of the bus when they're outside the bus crossing the street? So anyway, so we got all that. The verdict ended up being $36.1 million, and then it was reduced to $32 million for a percentage on mom, which I was fine with. And as a result of that, we were able to get Isabella a structured settlement, also a special needs trust. They were able to buy a house, a one-story house. She got a motorized wheelchair. They got a Hoyer lift for their backyard pool. The mom sends me pictures every year at Halloween. Dia de los Muertos. They have her all fixed up for Dia de los Muertos around Halloween, and now she's like 17 years old. They said, and the other thing was the defense said she wouldn't live more than 3 years.
Wow.
And I had a
That's
aunt.
what they were trying to reduce.
That's right. They're trying to reduce the damages. And so here she is. I think she's 18 now. She had a quinceañera with mariachis in their backyard. The mom sent me a video. It was unbelievable. And she's in a wheelchair and she can't talk. But all the other kids, here's the other thing I learned. All the other kids, the cousins and everything, because I went to their house and hung out with them there at the house in Highland, and all the kids were like so good with this girl, and they all watched out for her, and they all knew Isabella, and she could only communicate with her hand. So when she was happy, she would go like this, and she was unhappy, she'd kind of go like this, and that's it. And she had an eye gazer, a computer for a voice that she could try and do an eye gazer because she can't talk. And, but she's still alive, still having a life. Her mom sent me pictures. She went to New York City. She's gone to the beach. She's been to Hawaii. She's had a life. And I think other kids might have learned maybe to appreciate their life a little bit more when they see a girl like Isabella, what she's overcome. So anyway, that to me was a life-changing experience as a lawyer.
Absolutely.
For sure. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing both of those, right? That first one there,
first one.
and then this one as well.
The other one was a little more, Isabella was more complicated. Yeah.
Both snapshots, though, of an amazing and legendary career. So thank you for sharing that, Joe.
You're welcome.
Just have a couple more things that I wanted to ask you about. You're now president of the Consumer Attorneys of California, CAOC. Yes. For those of you, our listeners who may not be aware, that is sort of, I call it the mothership, right, of all our trial lawyer associations throughout California. It's a prestigious position and also comes with responsibility as well, right? Very big one. What's been your mission throughout your presidency?
Yeah, that's such another great question. So, number one, we're really the political wing of our practice. And, the people that we represent, they don't have a voice. We're their voice. They don't really have, quote unquote, lobby. Isabella didn't have a lobbyist for her in Sacramento to say, hey, you need Medi-Cal and you need stuff for your wheelchair. They don't have it. We're it. Yeah. We're it. Us, and I now think maybe like Consumer Watchdog. Those two groups, we're the ones that fight. So we have to constantly monitor legislation that has been brought by the Chamber of Commerce and big oil and big insurance to take away the rights of a girl like Isabella. Because trust me, they don't want to pay that money. No. They don't want to pay that money. They want to reduce it. They want to limit it. They want to put caps on what she can get and all these things. So we have to monitor that every day. And we have a group in Sacramento that does that. But I have a call every week on what things are going on and what ones we need to oppose, who do we talk to, because the great thing about most of the politicians that run for office in California is they have a value system of wanting to be the voice for the people that live in their district. And many times it's a voice for a girl like Isabella. So we're able to connect with them. When we're able to show our stories of our clients, they listen. And but it's a huge responsibility. I'll be honest. It's like a second job, honestly. It's like a second job, and it's so scary because things can go bad so quickly. If they had had a cap on the damages for Isabella, she wouldn't have been able to get some of the physical therapy and wheelchairs and Hoyer lift and a van and all that. She wouldn't have been able to get that. So we have to constantly stay vigilant and fight for that, and that's the job this year as president. It's a big responsibility. I take it very seriously, but I also want to, because we've had some bad press too of people that have not practiced the right way, and I want to return the element of honor and dignity, civility to our practice for our members, because I think if the leader practices that way, everyone else will follow suit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I've loved that because I've heard you speak about those 4 values, right?
Yeah.
About honor, integrity, civility, decency, and courage as well. Actually,
Right. I added a 5th.
Yeah, 5th, right? And why are those in particular so important to you?
Yeah, I think it goes to my core values. 2 weeks ago, I marched for immigrants in our state, in my area where I live in the South Bay. And I go, right now they're demonizing immigrants. And I don't care if they're undocumented or documented. They're demonizing immigrants that are the foundation of this country. And that, to me, just feels wrong. So why do I do this? I feel like I do it for those people because they don't have a voice. The guy out there in Oxnard picking strawberries, running from the Border Patrol guys. I mean, are you kidding me? That's where we are right now, Kenny. And so I was like this before this happened, but now it's like a flashing light, real time of there's never been a more important time to speak up about honor and decency for our country as Americans. We're not acting very American. That's how I feel.
Yeah. And how do you live out, and maybe advice for people as well in the face of all this happening? How do you live out those ideals that you've talked to us about in the face of pressure, of ego, of competition, of everything that's happening? How do you live those values out?
So I think you live them out through your own family, through your own neighborhood, through the people that you interact with. You hear something, you say something. You hear somebody talk about judges and they're all corrupt. Do you remember? I don't remember anyone ever saying, every single time they mention a judge now, they say who appointed him. This is a Obama judge. This is a Bush judge. This is a Trump judge. They're supposed to be judges. They're supposed to follow the Constitution of the United States. It doesn't matter who appointed them. And so, but now everyone is suspicious and thinking that the whole system is corrupt because of who appointed them or what their bent is. And, do they listen to Fox News all day or do they do this or what not? And it's really, I think our society has lost trust in our profession a little bit because of this, and not just our profession, but in the rule of law. And they've lost trust in it, and it's our job to bring that back. Yeah. And if we bring that back, one neighborhood, one case, one client at a time.
Yeah, and thank you so much for doing that, Geoff, both the CAOC and yourself as our president. People, consumers particularly, don't know that all the work that you do and that the organization does to help them. It's not just as plaintiff attorneys that we're grateful, but it's actual consumers, people that are hurt, people whose rights need protecting. If you're not doing it, then people will have their rights violated, quite frankly.
We are the voice of the voiceless. And that's that goes all the way back to Cesar Chavez, but we're the voice of the voiceless. We're going to stand up for these people that don't have a voice. And I know you do that every day. I try and do that every day. And I think it would be really great if we could get young people today in our country to do that every day. In your classroom, you see somebody getting bullied. You see somebody making a racist comment. Say something about it. Do something. Say something about it. Stand up for people. I think that we can take our country back one, person at a time. I really do, because I do believe the core belief that Americans do believe in due process and do believe in justice and do believe in honor and integrity and decency. I really do believe that. And I think that we have to remind people sometimes that they believe in it.
Yeah.
And I'm here to help do that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you know what I love about what you're saying here as well is that I think with everything that's happening, a person, a young person, whoever it is, can kind of look around and go, wow, I don't even know how to change this. It feels very hopeless and frustrating and maddening more than anything. And how do I change any of it? Yeah. And I love your words here because it starts with your community, whoever's around you. Like, be that change, because as a cliche as it may sound, it really starts at home or where your community, and that can have an impact at large if each one of us is doing that.
I really believe that. Be the change you want the world to be. That is a saying. Yeah. And but I do believe in that. And I've tried to instill that in both my kids, and I know my wife believes it too.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm mindful of your time as our president and as a active practice, right? So I want to make sure I get you out of here in time. I just have one thing that I really wanted to ask you about, because I know coaching has been such a big thing in your life. Coaching baseball, you coach your son. And I wanted to ask a little bit about that. How has coaching your son and other athletes helped shape your leadership style?
Well, another great question, Kenny. Boy, I've learned. And by the way, when you're coaching youth sports, you're not just coaching youth. You're also having to deal with parents. So one of the things I learned was how to help deal with parents, to help lower their expectations, and also build their trust. That I have the best interest of their child at heart. So I learned how to kind of navigate all that. I coached travel ball for about 6 years. I had basically the same group of kids and parents, and I did get that trust factor, I believe, from those parents. But then I also saw other teams that did not have that, and you could see the difference. People want to coach and yell from the stands and the whole thing, and do this, Mikey, and do that, Mikey. And I come over and I would say to him, hey, I really appreciate the fact that, you're into the game and everything. Do you trust me as a coach for Mikey? Yes. Would you feel comfortable in just letting me coach Mikey during the games? Yes. All right. And I know you want to say things and help him. How about saying things for the team? As opposed to just Mikey. And, that's a lesson I have learned from coaching. It's about the team and not the individual. And if you think about it, you and I were on the same team as Planet Flyers too. Right. But that coaching thing that's a thing about the team as opposed to the individual. And that permeates with the kids, because the kids get that really quickly. Right. Parents, not so much, sometimes. But you can help them say, hey, how about things rooting for the team as opposed to just your son, and and they're pretty receptive to that. And I find that's good in basketball too, and baseball, soccer. I've coached them all. Girls softball, I wasn't so good at that sport, but but I've coached, and I'm not so great at soccer either. But I did learn to try and calm down a little bit. And by the way, when I first started coaching, I had coached as a graduate assistant at the UW. Right. Okay. Then I went from that to T-ball. Okay. So on our T-ball team, very different. On our T-ball team, and those kids are, I don't know, what are they, 5 or 6? On our T-ball team, we had 2 girls. And we had a girl named Kendall and a boy named Jackson too, which is sort of funny because of the wine, Kendall, Jackson, wine. Anyway, we had a girl, and she wouldn't move unless the ball was hit exactly to where she was. And I'm like, Kendall, you got to be able to move a little bit to go get the ball, And then finally she got the ball hit to her. She was so excited that she caught it that she didn't throw it to first. And I'm yelling, throw the ball, throw the ball, throw the ball, throw the ball. Yeah. And the other coach came to me and said, hey, man, you're scaring the kids. And I go, Jesus, I need to take a step back here. I'd coached, 19 and 18 and 19, 20-year-olds. And then you're doing 5-year-olds. I had to learn to calm down. So it is a learned thing, because I used to get way too excited at T-ball, and I had to learn to calm down, and I did. Over time, that's the thing other thing I learned was you can't yell so much at the kids. I mean, they don't respond to that. And when I grew up, the coaches yelled. I mean, that was what they did, but that isn't so good anymore. So those are things that I've
Yeah.
taken away. Yeah.
I love that because it's also like we're always evolving and learning, right?
Yeah.
And my growth doesn't stop just because I'm an adult now, right? Like
Right.
the practice of law, we never know everything, right? We're always going to be learning, and as in law, as in life.
Your whole life, Kenny. I talk to Brown Green probably once a week. He's going to be 88 this summer.
Wow.
He asks me about legislation. He asks me about new things going on. He's still learning at 88. You know, and I think that's one of the keys to happiness in life that comes not from material things, but comes from your inner peace and joy of being curious and obviously always wanting to learn about new things. And that's what makes life wonderful, actually.
It's awesome. And the very last thing I'll just ask you here, I've heard you say that you want the attorneys that we have now to also to look like the people that we represent.
Yes.
Why is that? What do you mean by that? And why is that important?
So it is so important. I learned a long time ago, having many Hispanic clients, really, and it would have to have an interpreter. Interpret for them. I did learn Spanish because I went to South America when I was in high school one trimester, but not fluent. And so I learned the ability for someone to be able to communicate to someone that looks and talks like them. It lowers the anxiety level in the room. It really does. And I just see the joy also of that in that person's face when they're seeing a African-American client sees an African-American lawyer. They get a chance to see, there are people that look like me that do this. And I think it's so important for the kids. Probably my favorite picture that summarizes that better than anything else is a picture of President Obama. And there's a young African-American kid in the White House in the Oval Office, and he leans down and that kid touches his hair to see that he has the same kind of hair that he does. And I thought, that kind of says it all to me right there. You know, you want to be able to see people that you can relate to that have a background, right? Don't you think that's true?
Absolutely. No,
Yeah.
100%. Thank you for sharing everything you have with us today, Geoff, and with your words and even with what you're saying right now. I mean, in a sort of a time and place in our country where we might be looking to the people that are in leadership institutions, and we may not be so enthralled with what's happening and disillusioned, perhaps even, that we can, here in our profession, look toward people who are our leaders and be proud of that. Thank you for the work that you do and for what you represent and what you continue to do.
And thank you for your leadership out here in the IE. And President-elect of the Inland Empire Trial Lawyers, that's a big deal. And, you know, I look forward to working with you for many years, Kenny. You're a born leader. It's obvious to everyone that's around you. And keep it going.
Well, thank you very much.
And anything I can do to ever help you, you always reach out to me.
I appreciate that, Geoff. Thank you so much.
All right.
And for all the listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that this was a value add to your life. It certainly was for me in my life, and I hope it is for yours as well. Please share, subscribe. Remember, this is on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're in the car and you just want to listen to the audio, we also have it on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. Share with friends and family. We'll see you on the next one with another great guest.